Hey, it's Desiree Stafford. Super excited today about this topic. It's about, are you arguing for your limitations? And I think this is really important because so often we don't realize when we are actually arguing for our limitations instead of being open to play with the possibilities. So I am about to sell one of my last rental properties this year. So I have 8 properties. I've so far sold 3. And I'm selling the last one that I desire to sell tomorrow. Okay, so I'm beyond excited. Now, what was interesting for me was that I just found out yesterday that the person buying the property is someone who was interested in buying the property maybe about 5 years ago. And I'm selling the property basically at a loss. I'm still walking away breaking even, but there's a loss here. There's no profit from it. And when I found out yesterday, it really, it took me a moment to sit down and just accept the fact that, I allowed myself to lose so much money on this deal because this is a person who showed interest in the property I think it was about 5 years ago, and I didn't sell it to him then. And instead of reaching out to him when I knew I was going to sell the property, I just assumed there was no interest. And I'm sharing that story with you because so often, hey, Lamar, how are you? So often, we make assumptions that are not to our benefit, and we don't even realize how it's hurting us long term. So I want you to think about that. I want you to really think about how often you are arguing for your own limitations, meaning how often are you assuming that you know things? Are you, I think that's really what it comes down to. Like, a lot of times we make assumptions that we can't, that something's not going to work, that we already know how to do it, versus being open to possibilities. Now, if I was really thinking clearly, if I was in my right mind, what I could have done was reach out to that person and said, hey, are you still interested? Even if he said no, what would have been the harm in me reaching out to that person saying, hey, I'm getting ready to sell this property. Are you still interested? Right? And I chose not to do that. So I want you to think about, for your own life, your own experiences, where are you doing those kind of things? Yesterday, I misspoke. I talked about, I've had many mentors throughout my career, and I talked about the fact that a lot of what's been working for me these days, I had to figure it on my own. And that was not accurate, because I have had many mentors, and while there have been some who focus specifically on business that were not as helpful as I wanted them to be, I have had mentors in other areas whose support has affected me in my business positively, right? One of the things that I do remember is that sometimes when I was working with mentors in the past, I thought I knew a lot of shit. I was like, I already know that. I've already tried that. I've already read that. I've already done that. I already know it, right? And when you do that, when you come into a mentoring relationship or coaching relationship shut down because you think you already know, the only person you're really hurting is yourself, right? And so I've gotten honest about that with myself. I've gotten clear about that. I've identified the reasons why that happens. And it doesn't happen to the same degree that it used to before, because I've acknowledged to myself that I don't know everything, right? If I did, I would have the results that I wanted. I wouldn't need some support, right? So that's another way in which I share that story with you, because that's another way in which we can also argue for our limitations. We can, one of the things I've noticed with working with some clients, I don't work with these clients anymore, is when they were mirroring back to me how I was showing up in my own coaching relationships, where they were coming to me shut down. They were coming to me already knowing everything, right? They were arguing for their limitations as well, right? And if you are arguing for your limitations, if you are not open to the possibilities, you're not willing to play with the possibilities, then no one can really help you, right? That is something that you have to become open to, right? Now, someone can challenge you. If they're a good coach or mentor, in my opinion, they will challenge you. That's what I do with my clients, but they can't force you. They can't make you be open, right? That's something that you have to be willing to do. Now, there are some of us who are better than others at influencing our clients to open up more, right? But part of that is a learning experience, right? Finding the right person who can encourage you to open up and things like that. But at the end of the day, no one can make you be open. No one can make you be open to the possibilities, right? The best we can do is challenge you and help you see what those possibilities are, so that you can make a decision to be open to them versus arguing for your limitations, all right? So, hey, Melissa, how are you? Hey, Cindy, hey, Leah. Does anyone have any questions? Because I went in a couple different directions, as I typically do. But I think it's really important that we have this conversation, because there are often times when you can want something really, really badly and resist it at the same time, and not even be aware that you're resisting, right? Not even be aware that you're like doing this push and pull, right? You're wanting something to come to you, and then you push it away. You want to pull it back in, and then you push it away, right? And it's so insidious, this kind of behavior, where oftentimes it is so unconscious that we're doing that. So it's important that you really check in with yourself, right? You don't expect a coach or a mentor to be able to do all of that for you, because it's a partnership. I've talked about this before, but you also look at yourself and how you're showing up in those relationships, and seeing whether or not, you know, you are open to possibilities, or you're arguing for your limitations. I'll give you another example. Hey, Leah, how are you? I'll give you another example. I used to work with coaches and mentors in the past who would tell me that, you know, Desiree, for what you offer your clients, you should be charging more. And I'd say, no, I can't charge that, right? And there's no possible way that I can charge that, right? And no matter what they said, I'm like, nope, it's too much for me. It's too high for me. That's an example of arguing for your limitation, right? Instead of being open to the possibility, instead of saying, you know what? I don't know how the fuck I'm going to do that, but if you think I can do that, I'm open to it. Can you show me how, right? Because if you say no, if you immediately go into, I can't do that, it's impossible, whatever, then what happens? Again, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you immediately say no, you shut down, you argue for your limitations, guess what? You will get your limitations, right? And no one can shift that but you, okay? Nobody can shift that but you. I think someone asked me yesterday, well, how do you get to the point of making a different choice? In my experience, people typically make a different choice, when the pain is so overwhelming that they feel like there's nothing else to do but change. Or if they have someone in their corner, again, whether it's a coach or a mentor, whatever the case may be, if they have someone challenging them. When I say challenge, what I really mean is someone who can point out the pain that they're experiencing, right? Point out what it's costing them to continue to be in the situation that they're in. They're basically bringing truth to the situation. Again, you as an individual have to choose whether or not you want to make a change, but it is sometimes easier to do that when you have someone who's courageous enough, because it does take courage to do this, who's courageous enough to point certain things out to you so that you can choose to do something different. All right. So it's either you feel like this intense amount of pain where it can no longer continue for you, or you know, you have someone who can help you see all of the things that are not working as a result of you not solving this problem. So for me, you know, losing a lot of money in real estate is a big fucking deal, because that means if I'm losing money in one area, I'm losing money in other areas, right? Business is a business. And so if I didn't see opportunity in my real estate business in order to make more money when the opportunity was there and I wasn't looking for it because I wasn't open to it, right? That means in my coaching business, there have been opportunities where I've missed, right? There have been situations where I've lost money as well, meaning left money on the table. So don't think that, you know, well, let's say, for example, you have two businesses as well. Don't think, well, if I miss something, or I miss an opportunity, or if I'm shut down to opportunities in one business, it doesn't affect me in my primary business, right? Or if I'm missing opportunities in my personal life, it doesn't affect me in my business life. It does, because we are who we are everywhere we are. So if we're shutting down to opportunities in one area, we're going to be shut down to opportunities in another area, right? So it's very important that you are mindful of, again, the topic of this conversation is whether or not you're arguing for your limitations. It's important because so often we don't realize that that is what we are doing. We don't realize that we're shut down. We don't realize that we're, you know, coming from this perspective of thinking that we know it all. And oftentimes that comes from fear, right? It comes from feeling like you don't know it all. So you feel like you have to project that you do, right? Sometimes it's coming from, you know, the tendency that we often have to look back to our past and think that because something didn't work in our past, or it didn't turn out the way that we desired, that it won't work in the future. And we forget that we are now a different person than we were, or we should be, than we were, you know, in the past. And so the experience could be different, right? Okay, cool. So does anyone have any questions about what I'm sharing? This is really, really important, whether or not you are arguing for your limitations or you are remaining open to the possibilities, okay? If there's an example of, or if there's a situation where you've done this in the past and you're not sure if you were arguing for your limitations or if you were open to possibility, ask me. We can clarify that now. Because if you're not, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're not diligent in observing this and checking yourself when it happens, it's very easy to continue to keep your ceiling low. It's very easy to continue to play small without knowing that that's what you're doing, because when we're arguing for our limitations, we're sabotaging ourselves. That's essentially what we're doing, right? So if you're not aware of the ways in which you sabotage yourself, you will continue to do that, right? So this is something that's important that you are mindful of and you know what to do about it. Okay, cool. Yes, Melissa, right. So, okay, if no one has any questions, I'm trying to think if there's any other story that I can share with you, like to give a really good example on what this looks like. And there's nothing else that's coming to mind at the moment. So I'm going to wrap up here. But if any of you have questions about this, reach out to me, right? Or your own coach or mentor. If you're already working with someone, reach out to them. But don't, I'm pausing because I feel like there's something else coming up here. Hold on. Yes, there is something else coming up here. Melissa, explain what you mean when you say limitation with friends, and I'll come back and answer that. What's coming up for me right now is it can feel very difficult, it can feel uncomfortable, it can feel very vulnerable if you are used to being strong, if you're used to being independent, if you're used to being really smart, to ask for help. Because on some level, you might feel that you should already know it all. You should already have it all together, especially if that's part of your identity. I know for a long time, you know, people just assumed that I always had it together, and I didn't. And because I knew that people assumed that because they would say it to me, I felt very uncomfortable acknowledging that I needed help, right? So if that is you, be mindful of that, and also pay attention to how that has been limiting you in your life, because you will tend to be someone who feels like you have to be the one juggling all the balls all the time, right? And that you have to be the one carrying the weight of the responsibility for every relationship in your life, whether it's a personal relationship with a partner or it's a professional relationship with a client, right? Where it's like you feel the weight right here all of the time. It's like you're constantly carrying other people. But that's a choice that you're making. You might not be aware that you're making that choice, but it is a choice, and you can choose to do something different once you become aware of it, okay? So that, I really felt like I needed to share that, so I hope that resonates with some folks. All right. Hey, Colleen, how are you? So Melissa, when you say limitations with friends, what do you mean? Because I don't want to guess at what you mean, but if you can explain that better, I'll be happy to give you some insight on that. Are you? Okay, so any other questions? Anything else that you want to ask? Okay, here. So Melissa says, setting boundaries when they aren't supportive in certain ways. They are, but aren't. And energy vampires. I kind of think, Melissa, you already know what I'm going to say with this, but absolutely you want to set boundaries with your friends. If anyone in your life, friends, family, whatever the case may be, if they are not supporting you in the way that you need to be supported, and you have had the conversation about that, then I would recommend that you create some distance, right? Because you ultimately know what you need. And if you're not getting what you need in a relationship, then you have to decide whether or not that relationship still should have a front row seat in your life. Let's just put it that way, right? Like you have to decide whether or not you're going to continue to spend as much time with the people who are not able to give you what you need. Now, I feel like I always have to be kind of cautious with this because I was raised to be a giver. My grandmother, my mother, like that's just what we did. We'd give. And so I'm very conscious of the idea that you want to give in a relationship. Oftentimes you'll hear me talk about receiving, right? Because when I'm talking to my ideal clients, they, like me, have been prone to give. So the shift that needs to be made is they need to learn how to receive more, right? And so in a friendship, if you're not getting what you need, it is okay for you to, you know, have some standards around that and expect to receive more, without feeling guilty about that, without feeling like there's something wrong with that, without feeling like you're being selfish because of that. There is some level of selfishness that we all have. It's whether or not we allow ourselves to acknowledge that there's times when we feel more selfish, and that it's okay. So we don't have to beat ourselves up because of that. So when it comes to boundaries in friendships, and I would say even any other kind of relationships, like the person that you're dating or married to, or whatever the case may be, if they're not able to support you in the way that you need to be supported, then you have to start making some tough decisions about whether or not that relationship is able to grow with you, right? So, and also if you have friends who are energy vampires, same thing, right? If somebody feels like an energy vampire, it means that you feel like they're taking more than they're giving, right? So do you want to continue in that relationship or not? First, always have the conversation, because I see that you're asking me if you should naturally let it go. I always recommend that we communicate first. We communicate with the people that we really care about. Listen, this isn't working for me. When this happens, this is how I feel, right? Not blaming the other person, right? This is not about bashing somebody and making them wrong. This is about, okay, this is how I feel, and expressing how you feel to the other person. And then making it clear, what do you need in order for that relationship to feel like you're getting something out of it as well, right? So that's always my first go-to recommendation. If you keep talking and nothing keeps changing, then you have to accept that the person is who they are. You also are who you are, and you have your needs, and then let it go if that's what you need to do, right? Because what we don't want to do is feel like we are obligated to be in relationship with certain people, right? If we're not able to get our needs met, because then that's like continuing to be in like this I was going to say codependent relationship, and I'm not quite sure that's what I mean here, but it's like you're in a situation where you are the only one giving, right? You're not the one receiving, and I think relationships should be about both giving and receiving, right? And so if you're making your needs known and they're not being met, then they're not being met, right? But that doesn't mean that you should continue to tolerate that. That means that you have to make a choice whether or not you're willing to continue to be in a situation where your needs are blatantly not being met, right? And sometimes that's a tough choice for people, but it's a choice that needs to be made. Because again, what I said earlier, we are who we are everywhere we are. So if you are tolerating with your friendships, your needs not being met, you're probably tolerating that in other relationships that you have, right? Whether they're romantic relationships, whether they're professional relationships. And that's not good, right? We are all here to be the fullest expression of who we are. And the fullest expression of who we are has needs and wants. And why should they continue to go unmet? Why would it be okay for you to give to other people and not expect for you to receive what you need in order to feel satisfied in a relationship? I hope that's clear. All right, cool. Any other questions? Okay. Hey, Valley, is it Vale? Vale, how are you? All right, so I'm going to wrap it up unless anyone else has any other questions. I'm going to go. I love this topic, by the way. If you are not a member of my group, you should be if you enjoyed this conversation. It's called Powerhouse Entrepreneurs. So I think you can just go to like the Facebook search or whatever. Actually, I think I can put it here and come join us, because I really like this conversation that we had today. And I'm going to be doing more of these in my group so we can get really down. So we can get really down and personal with certain things. All right. So until we speak again, really be mindful of whether or not you're arguing for your limitations or you're open to all the possibilities that are there. And by the way, this kind of goes to what we were just talking about, Melissa, about, you're welcome, about, letting go of people who are energy vampires. The more you're willing to do that, the more you are open to the people who add more to you, right? So people who give you, and when I say give you, I mean they're adding to the energy that you already have versus feeling like you're in relationships with people who are taking from you. Make sense? All right, cool. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.